Hi, it's Natasha and welcome to my channel. New England is known for its witches, but did you know that vampire hysteria also took over the region? This video is about Mercy Brown, the vampire of Exeter, Rhode Island, and the last victim of the vampire panic of New England. The vampire panic was actually a response to a tuberculosis outbreak, which was called consumption at the time because it basically consumed your entire body. And because it was so easily spread among families, some people throughout New England and Europe believed that it was caused by a recently infected, recently deceased family member who was coming back from the dead and draining the life out of the rest of the family. Whenever there was a suspected vampire in the family, the body would be exhumed and examined, but because decomposing bodies tend to look bloated and sometimes leak blood, it often did look like the body was coming out and feasting at night. There were lots of really gross natural remedies to fight off these vampires, which usually included mutilating the body and ingesting parts of it. I'm using air quotes around vampires because it's not very likely that the people who believed in these hauntings and rituals would actually use that term. It's just the term used by newspapers to describe these corpses. Also, around the time of Mercy Brown's case, a lot of people were starting to believe more in science and saw a lot of these things as old world superstitious folk medicine and didn't really take it seriously. But unfortunately, there were still a lot of people who did. The Brown family lived in Exeter, Rhode Island, which was a small, rocky farming community that had basically become a ghost town since the Civil War. And in the late 19th century, they were consumed by tuberculosis. It started with the mother, Mary Eliza, who was the first to die from the disease, followed by the oldest daughter, Mary Olive. And then a few years later, the son, Edwin, also contracted the disease and was sent to Colorado Springs to improve his health. Mercy was really young when her mother and sister died, and she didn't become sick until about a decade later while her brother was away. She probably had the disease for years but was asymptomatic, so her symptoms started coming on suddenly and she died pretty soon after they started, on January 17th, 1892, at the age of 19. Around that time, Edwin had returned and was getting sick again after a brief remission from the disease. Their father, George, was not superstitious, but the rest of the town was, and exactly 2 months after Mercy died, they convinced him to exhume the bodies of his wife and daughters to see who was killing his son. Mary Eliza and Mary Olive were obviously very decomposed at the time, so they were cleared, but Mercy was still very well preserved, probably because she was stored above ground in a crypt in the middle of winter, and her heart was still full of blood, so she was presumed to be the family vampire. The villagers burned her heart and liver, mixed the ashes with water, and gave the tonic to Edwin to drink as a cure. It did not work, and he died 2 months later. The remains of Mercy's body were buried with the rest of her family in the cemetery of the Baptist Church in Exeter. I actually stopped by there last winter on the way back from a trip to Newport, and her gravestone is really easy to find, and it's covered in a lot of little offerings. George somehow became one of the only people in the area to never catch tuberculosis, and he lived until 1922. The relatives of the Brown family still live in the area and keep Mercy's memory alive. Mercy's incident has been the inspiration for books and short stories and novels since then, including Caitlin R. Kiernan's short story, So the World Runs Away, Sarah L. Thompson's young adult novel, Mercy, the Last New England Vampire, and Paul Tremblay's novel, The Pallbearers Club. People also believe that the character Lucy Westerna in Bram Stoker's Dracula was based on Mercy. Mercy's case has been investigated in the TV show Monster Quest and in the podcast and TV show Lore, which inspired this video. Mercy Brown's story marked the end of the New England vampire panic that had been going on since at least 1793. Luckily, now tuberculosis is preventable and curable, so there's no more vampires running around New England. And for the most part, we have moved away from superstitious beliefs around diseases. But I think what this story shows is how quick people are to find a scapegoat and to try to do whatever we can to gain control over situations when presented with major problems that we don't understand. But what I really want to know is why they thought that Mercy was the vampire when she was the third person to die of the disease and she got sick after her brother did. Like, I just don't see the logic behind that. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something and enjoyed the video. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in another video. Bye.